Guys, agenda remains the same. Hopefully, the engagement will be far more and not just towards the end. Julian is completely cool with questions, interactions within, so please feel free, raise your hand digitally, uh, analog perspective, or even use voice codes, completely okay. Yeah, it's an informal setup. Let's keep it that way. If you guys can switch on your cameras, that's fantastic. If not, that's completely understandable. Right, we again have a case study and a kind of insight based on data, which is apt to this conversation today on power hitting. We kind of collated some information for you guys. Looking forward to Julian doing his bit and then an open house and discussions, right? So let's try and make the open house discussion along with the talk. This is an interesting one. And I was discussing this and I was thinking, shall we put this or not? Because the levers are not completely known, but the intent is. A lot of times, many coaches I have seen saying that this is what I want you to achieve and go figure. Yeah. And I think I've seen that producing some extraordinary results. This is one of those. Here, actually, one of the coaches here in this, he had a discussion with a player who wanted, and he was seeing that the ball was not skidding off the surface. And all he said to this player was, you know what, mate, I want you to hit so that you hit the ball on the full when the ball hits the net. Figure this out yourself, get that thing right. Right? So he gave him a target. And before the discussion, his swing speed was 38 and 29, which makes it roughly around 70-75% of timing. All right. And he started getting his head around, the player getting his head around it. And he started ensuring that the ball impact point was like that, where the ball actually hit the net on the full. Right. And you could see the ball was actually caressing down. And there was a 47% increase in swing speed and 24% increase in timing index. Right. And the only lever we could figure out, and there's a lot of unknown, and I'll be the first one to admit, is that what he changed, definitely you'll see in the original, if you look at it, there was a bit of cutting of the bat suddenly towards the impact point. After the change, it became more behind the intended direction of the shot. And this small change had a big impact. I'm sure there'll be more levers to it, don't know, but the biggest point which I wanted to drive is sometimes, and I've seen it many times, some of the best coaches doing that, is that they give them the target, the player, and they figure out what to achieve, and the results can be extraordinary. Yeah, thought it was an interesting, we don't have all answers to why this happened. So I was a bit uncomfortable to share this, but I thought that's where, innovation comes in, right? You share something, what happened, and then you try and understand what actually made that impact. That was one case study about a player. Wanted to share this. Move on. Since Julian is talking about power hitting, we thought that let's collate some of the levers, if you will, of what makes aggressive shots, powerful shots better. All right, Julian, this will be interesting for you.
Yeah.
We have seen that when you're playing in the offside, 4-degree closer angle has created 50% higher swing speed. 50% higher swing speed when aggressive shots. I'm not talking about defenses and so on and so forth. Yeah. In leg side, 8-degree wider angle has created 27% higher impact speed and 21% higher swing speed. Net laws of physics, you play with the momentum, you get more power. And cutting across the line, taking a longer path doesn't. Yeah, we all know it. It's now proven, and we need not shy behind the beauty of and the art of batting. There is data to tell you what probably we all know. And we all talk about leaning towards the ball, 9% higher swing speed and 10% higher impact speed while playing forward as compared to playing around the crease. There are 5 or 6 levers we have. There are three big levers we saw that while playing aggressive shot, this has helped, and this is data from elite players across the globe. Yeah, this is players playing at the state level and above. Yeah, I thought I'll leave this thing to you and give you a segue, if you will, Julian, right, on what power hitting means. Is there a structure in attack, right? And you asked a very good question. We were discussing this, right? That, the most dangerous phrase we have learned in life, and not just cricket, is that we have always done this way, right? And that's kind of, really putting the lid, if you will, on innovation, on new things, and trying new things and succeeding. So I found that discussion with you very interesting, that why we have to reinvent ourselves and unlearn what we have learned to learn new things. I hand over Julian to you. Julian.
Okay, cheers, guys. That leads nicely into what I'm doing. Hang on, let me just hang on. There we go. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
We all good? Okay, good. So,
yep.
I'm going to take you through basically in half an hour. I've got about 30 slides. I'm going to try and take you through. Try and take you through where it all started really for me. But what I do is I work with players. Basically, they come to me to hit the ball harder, to hit the ball more consistently, to hit the ball in different areas. Okay, so like Gagan said, the most dangerous phrase in the language is we've always done it this way. And when I think back to when I played, there are so many things as a batter. I was a batter that we've been taught that I believe that are incorrect really. And I look back at it and think, why was I doing that? I was a shots player when I played, and I spent 6 years in my professional career being told, no, you can't do that. You can't do this. So as a player, I probably felt very restricted. So this was late 80s. I probably felt very restricted. And then when I came into coaching, when I look back on it now, I probably felt quite restricted as a coach as well. Because it was the same stuff. Then suddenly T20 started coming about 10 years ago. And then to me, that's where everything started changing really for me, because I realized there was different ways of doing things. So what we're going to look at the foundations of power hitting for it's that phrase that everybody sort of associates me with, how it works and some of these successes. It all started about 10 years ago. I went out to the States and I met this guy here who's Scotty Culbra. He was the hitting coach for the Texas Rangers. And T20 had just started to evolve. I went and asked a lot of pro cricketers. I said, if you could have one more thing, one extra thing, what would it be? And they all came back with the same thing: more power. How can I hit the ball harder? Strike rates were just coming into play. And again, I went back. I spent 2 weeks with the Rangers. So in the end, I ended up going back almost every year. Talking to him, he knows nothing about cricket, but what he does do, he knows about hitting a ball and hitting it hard. So I talked to the hitters. I was in the dugout during matches, which was phenomenal, a great experience. And I took a lot from, and I just made notes really. I just got this book that has just got loads of stuff in it. I haven't used half of it now. So, but I just found ways of hitting the ball harder. Cricket was always, to me, a very hand dominant game, batting. So now it was, how can we generate power? How can we generate power up through the body, out through the hands? So I spent a lot of time with these guys. These guys now are actually looking at cricket to help. We've looked at baseball has helped cricket before with throwing techniques. And now it's almost going the other way. So I'm talking to a guy called Anthony Ipotti, who's the hitting coach for the Chicago Cubs. And we're in discussions, and he's looking at cricket now. Whereas they always used to look at golf. So I don't know why they look at golf, because the ball's like an inch off the ground when they hit the ball. So I don't know why they would look at golf. But now he's starting to look at cricket and how cricket can help baseball. So that could be something moving forward. That could be really good. So that's how it basically all started. So it's like a crossover of sports. So if you look at these two images, they're almost identical. You know, we all know when you start to generate power, all right, it all comes from the bottom, the lower half. So you start to create angles in your back leg, and you start to hit against the braced front leg, and you've got those angles in the bottom arm as well. So if you black those out and took the pads off, they're very, very similar. And where they've made contact, very, very similar positions. Same thing here with the hands. I'm big into what your hands do, angle of the bat. So obviously trying to get those hands above your elbow to get yourself into a really good power position to be able to hit the ball. You don't have to strike it. You can leave it. You can block it. You can use the pace, but you're in a very, very aggressive position. Also, the back elbow. One thing that I'm big into is what the back elbow does. So if you look at the one on the left, those who don't know hurling, it's an Irish sport. It's completely mad, as you can see. They've got a hard ball, and this guy just sort of whacks it at them. But if you look at the bottom elbow when striking, it's very, very similar. So if you look at that compared to playing the long form, all right, the long form, the back elbow for certain players might be slightly different. Okay, because they're obviously trying to bat for longer, so they're obviously trying to play straighter. And so this, with that elbow, the elbow position, it enables you to play straight, to hit straight, but you don't play straight. So you start to play with a slightly angled bat, which opens up more options on both sides of the wicket. There's big talk now of bat speed. You hear them on the TV, the commentators, they say, oh, we've got quick hands. I think a lot of it, people say they've got quick hands, but they don't know how to coach it. And when I played, you either had quick hands or you didn't. I was lucky enough when I played, my hands went up nice and high, and my hands were quick, all right? But I didn't train that. That just sort of happened. But now you can actually work. There's drills that you can do to increase bat speed. And with straight bat as well, with everything that they've got on the handle that gives you the information and it's instant feedback, it's fantastic for players. Stats show that 85% of the power is supplied by the batter. That's if you're hitting in front of the wicket. So that's how important it is to be able to get the energy through your body and out through the hands. But it's how you do that. A lot of people say it, but I don't think they know. They talk about it, but I don't think they know how to do it. Of doing things. So what I've done is I've looked at baseball. Obviously, I've looked at the brutality of baseball hitting, and I've designed the mechanics to maximize the body's ability to generate a powerful force. Create optimum. Optimum is the key word there, and transfer. You have to be able to be in control, and you've got to transfer it up through your body to the bat to the ball. Obviously, power placement as well. Use the wrist to create angles. And giving you more, I've called them power options. But we're cricketers, so it's overlay of cricket skills. So you still have to, play a full defensive and back to me. I'm not saying that this is how you bat. I'm just saying there's different ways of doing it. But once you've got your basic foundation, then you build layers on top of that. So if you look at someone like Josh Buttler, who has got that basic foundation, that solid foundation, and then he's just put layers on top of it to improve his game. Player power and hitting power. Again, it doesn't. We're going to see some different swings in a bit. Player power and hitting power is very much. Some players are built for power, right? Other players surprise you with their power. Okay, so obviously the big, tall guys, strong guys have got power. The smaller ones, the little punchy ones haven't. I was working in Sussex with their academy, and there was a big guy, right? Shed loads of power. So he get them to hit a stationary ball first on a tee, right? Because you have to generate all the power off that tee. There's no momentum with the ball. So you have to generate power from a stationary ball. And his hand speed was 12 miles an hour quicker than this other guy who was smaller, a lot smaller. And this guy hit the ball off a tee like a bullet, all right? But when we went on the machine, so suddenly we went on the machine or he faced bowlers, the smaller guy hit the ball consistently harder, even though he wasn't as strong, but his technique was better. He had better technique. So when you look at the two American sports, you look at baseball and cricket, you know, would you rather work with a player with lots of technique and little power, or would you work with someone with shed loads of power and small technique? In cricket, we go for technique first, because you can always build power in. You can always add power. So that's why it's important that from a young age, they get those foundations. In baseball, they'll go the other way, though. They'll get the guy with shed loads of power, and they reckon they can turn him into a hitter. So they look the other way. Player and team differentiator. So if you can do this, if you have the ability to do it, you know, it makes you very, very valuable. You know, I've done a lot of work with Carlos Brathwaite. You know, we all remember the 4 balls when he hit Ben Stokes in the World Cup. You see, he'll probably never do that again. But that guy goes to nearly every franchise around the world every year I'm sure it's because of those 4 balls. He's obviously a good player, of course he is, but that helped massively. And that sort of kept him going. And obviously it makes you a game winner. So you put all those together. So we've got the base, stance and load, transfer of power, contact zones, and the mindset. If I just elaborate very quickly into this. So you can't cookie cut this. So you're developing a position. Everybody's different. Everybody's different shapes and sizes. All right. So it's different. If you can't just cookie cut it, you've got to work with individuals. Develop the ability to generate optimum power, transferring from your body to the bat to the ball efficiently. Contact zones, you know, you get, again, some players will play it very late. Some players will go at the ball, as we know. And the drills, so I use a lot of, I think Zubin touched on this, using weighted bats and weighted balls. I use loads of that. And the right mindset to basically become a hitter. Firstly, you've got to want to hit the ball hard. If you look at like levers and body types, so we've got 3 guys here. Big Carlos, first up, right? So if you watch him, so you've got obviously Carlos here, right? 6'4", he's massive, he's huge. You know, his hands will be quite slow but long through the ball. Grant Ruffelson plays for the Dolphins in South Africa. Again, 6'1", slightly different shape. Slightly quicker swing, and then you've got Marcus, who is like 5'6", all right, and everything is very quick feet, quick hands through the ball, right? So when you work with these guys, this is what I've found: a player's swing is defined in part by their body type, the levers, the way different body parts work together to produce their swing of the bat. Big, tall players obviously have long levers, greater length in the hitting zone due to their levers. They can stay they can keep the bat in the hitting zone for longer because obviously they're bigger, but their hands are slower but more powerful. The downside to these guys is it can be hard to hold the position because they're so long. So when working with these, you have to work differently than if you've got the smaller, shorter players who obviously have short levers, shorter, quicker movements like Marcus, less time in the strike zone. But these guys are easier to work with, I find, because their levers are smaller and they sort of work better to me. They're a bit more efficient. The only downside with these guys is they can be too quick through the ball. Timing of the movement in any shot is crucial. So that's just my experience with those guys. So I use I put weighted sleeves on batters as well, right? So the big guys, that will be just pure power and speed. So the weight is on the sleeves. They can use their own bats. And what that does is it slows your hands down, but then when you take them off, your hands are like greased lightning. So for the bigger guys, that works for increasing your hand speed. With the smaller guys like Marcus, he found his hands are quick anyway, but what it worked for him with it was on the tempo of the swing. All right, he actually hit them better, and a lot of the smaller guys or some players will hit the ball better with these on because it slows them down slightly. All right, so then it teaches them that I don't need to let my hands go through very quickly. All right, I control the tempo of the swing. All right, because it's that rhythm and timing. Batting's about rhythm and timing. Okay, so I'm not really going to go much into the rotation or the S&C part of it because I'm not an expert on that, and there'll be S&C guys here who will know. But I'm just going to pick out one part of the rotational power gym work. Simulate the power hitting progress. Simulating muscles firing sequence to create serious power. It's like activating. You're activating your work, activating work before you're batting. I use a lot of bungees as well, as I think Zubin does, to create overload, just seriously overloading and underloading. But that's part of like a gym program. So once you do that, you can almost, for batters, you're basically working, they've got their own little program, which this is included in that. It's not just in the gym lifting weights. You're actually working what you use when you're hitting a ball. All right, so that's been a big thing. And we looked at even like before games. So I've worked with a number of counties, and somebody, Gloucestershire, bought into this massively. So before they're going into bat, they'll hit these heavy balls, right? So they're waiting. So you're like activation. It's activated. It's little physical. There's no fatigue at all. It's just generating the nervous system before you're batting. So instead of just sitting there waiting to bat, especially down the back end of a T20, they're actually doing something explosive. It might only be like 3 balls, all right? But you're activating anything that increases adrenaline, really, okay, before they go out to bat. Now, this is something I've tried to push for with all the teams I play with. The Sydney Thunder did it. They had like a little an area at the back where the batters would hit balls before they went out. I did work with Hampshire. They didn't do it at all. You know, it's almost like, because we have a lot of tradition in this game, you know, I think that will happen. I think that will come. I'm pretty sure it will. But it's just, I'm trying to push for that. You know, this helps you get in the zone and basically puts you in the right mindset. The best activation tools, I think, before a game is high force, but minimum fatigue. Obviously, you don't want to be shattered because you're going to go out of bat. So it's just like bang, bang, bang. Three hitting a heavy ball, high speed, and like high coordination as well. Juggling as well before you go out to bat, especially down the back end of a T20. Same method for junior and top level. The modern day hitters, power hitters, must be able to combine correct batting, hitting mechanics with that of large ground reaction forces. So that lad there on the left, he's not deadlifting 80 kilograms, so don't worry about that, right? They're plastic weights, but it's sowing him the seed, you know, of the mindset, getting him in the right, correct mindset that it is important to do S&C. It's important if you want to hit the ball hard, you have to be fit and strong to do that. Put all that together, and then you've basically got the power hitting system. So if we look at some measurements, which again, straight bat, I've got all these going on, but bat speed, I look at a power transfer ratio, percentage. So bat speed plus ball exit speed equals power transfer ratio. So what that means is my bat speed is 70, my ball exit speed should be 70. It's like when Gagan showed earlier on those stats, right? The second one was closer to his bat speed. I think it was 56 and 53, whereas the first one, there was a big difference. So obviously something was lacking, all right? Obviously then the ball has energy, all right? The ball has energy. So if the ball has energy and you get the timing of the movements, then if your bat speed is 70 and say the bowler's bowled it at 80 miles an hour, you will add power to that. That's when you hit the ball near on 100 miles an hour. So this is player benchmarking. So what I did, I went to, in Major League Baseball, as you know, they're massive into stats. So I took a load of cricket bats out with me, different sizes, and they videoed me batting with all the shots that we play. And I said to them, right, obviously a baseball bat is different to a different shape to a cricket bat. But I said, look, can you, with all these movements, what you think the speed of the bat should be from an under 10 up to the pro level for elite players. So this is what they came up with. So I use this so the first when I see a player, I measure their hand speed. If they fall into this category, then they've obviously got good hand speed already. If they're not into that category, then we can work up to that. And then these guys are on there, but we're just trying to add to it always. But it just gives me again, it's that benchmarking very, very early on. Launch angle and exit velocity, it's a serious shot as well. So 42 degrees is a good launch angle. But anything 1 or 2 degrees off, even with good contact, will equal loss of distance. So that's why now I put up targets, as again, I think Zubin does. I put targets up at 42 degrees and they're looking to hit those, just gives them a target as well. Exit velocity needs to be part of your training program. So I have exit velocity weeks at the academy I work at, or exit velocity days where we just work at trying to increase our ball exit speed. You know, over here, we're indoors a lot in England. When we train, we're indoors a lot. So to break it up, like I might come in, bring in the radar, and the boys will be training, and suddenly we'll have a leaderboard, who hits the ball the hardest that day. And I sort of blow a whistle if someone beats the record, and then they go top of the list. The trouble with that is so guys will come in and work with me, do like 40 minutes, and then they go off and do their bowling. So the bowling coaches hate it because, say, someone like Benny Howe might be at the top of the leaderboard. He comes off and goes to do his bowling, and then Ryan Higgins goes in and beats him. So I blow the whistle, Ryan Higgins becomes top of the leaderboard, and then Benny's doing his bowling drills, but he wants to forget his bowling because he wants to come back in and try and get top of the leaderboard. So a great bit of competition as well. And I don't care if you're 10 years old or a professional cricketer, it's fun hitting a ball. All right, it really is. Exit speed required for given distance. You know, over here in the UK, professional first class cricket, 90 yards is the maximum the boundary could be, 82 metres. To clear that, it's got to leave you about 83 miles an hour. Obviously, it depends on atmospheric conditions and launch angle and stuff like that, which we've spoken about. But in T20 cricket, they bring the boundaries in. So that's why they want to see 4s and 6s. But see, everybody wants to hit the ball 100 miles an hour. That's what with my radar, that's the big thing. Everybody wants to clear that. If they can hit the ball 100 miles an hour, then they're very, very pleased. What makes a power player? Obviously, the ability to hit the ball hard, knowledge of line and length, the ability to hit all areas, the ability to make adjustments when forward, slower balls, etc. Got to be athletic, and the potential to become a game changer. So play a checklist. This is what I look for. So I look for strength, bat speed, absence of fear. That's an area, again, massive with young players. I think that's, again, you look at why England are so good in T20 cricket. You know, Owen Morgan's done a fantastic job. There's no price on their wicket, you see. And if you've got that, you're going to play, you know, you're going to play fearless. Aggressiveness, athletic, and strong base. So you start in a strong base, and then you get yourself into a strong base. So you'll just keep looking at power positions. The makeup of players. So I've worked with a lot of players all around the world. Some of them are the best players in the world, but they all sort of have these familiar traits to me. And it's, you know, there's no surprise that they all have these: strong desire to succeed, coachability, you know, their willingness to learn, maturity, their temperament, improvement, hunger, drive, consistent knowledge of the game, competitive, and how badly do they want it? You know, these guys have realised now that this is seriously, it's a major thing. There's only one thing that's harder than hitting a cricket ball, and it's hitting it consistently hard. All right. So when I first started doing this, you know, players dipped in and out of it. They loved the concept, they loved the idea, but they sort of dipped in, you know. But this is as important as a forward defensive and a back defensive now. What makes the leading power hitters the best at what they do is their consistency, because they practice more. And the most important quality they all share is their obsession with it. They work the hardest at it. You know, the ones, it's like anything, the ones who work the hardest will probably be the best. These guys who just play T20, it's obviously a bit easier for them because that's all they do. You know, the guys who are in all formats, they have to keep switching, chopping and changing. It's probably slightly harder. You know, where the game goes in 5 years' time? You know, will there be, like, if you look in England, will we have, well, it depends what's happening with COVID, obviously, but will we have red and white ball academies? You know, counties have a red ball academy and a white ball academy. You know, maybe the white ball academy will fund the red ball academy. I don't know. Who knows? But I can see that happening because they're starting to pick players quite early now at 15, 16. You know, I've got my lad's 15, and to get on the academy, you know, he's a batter and he's got to be able to bat top 5 in red ball and top 5 in white ball at the moment to get on the academy. So he has to do both. Whereas I can see in the future, you will have that, like I said, maybe red and white ball academies with the odd one in both. I don't know. But they all have the determination to get better. They work hard. Just a very brief biomechanical analysis, dynamic balance, bat lag, kinetic link, axis of rotation. I'm just going to go through very quickly. Just what I assess, really. Stance length, stride length, center of gravity, and the weight shift and your head movement. So those are the areas I look for when I'm looking at balance, dynamic balance, as I call it. Bat lag, again, my assessment will be hand position, wrist cock, and the bat angle. Almost like there's a lot of talk now of unweighting of the bat. You know, if you get your hands above your elbow, you know, then your wrist will be, your wrist has to be cocked. If your hands don't go above your elbow, you can't do that. Hip and shoulder lead and bat velocity. Again, these are just assessments that I look at when working with players. Kinetic link, front foot angle, back heel up, hips into rotation when shoulders closed. So you're getting that separation to allow those hands to get through quicker. And axis of rotation assessment, again, center of gravity, your head aligned, head central to your base, and in your head level, eyes level. And then what that does, it gives you basically the winning advantage. It's so, there's one other area that I'll just show you this quickly. So with the Big Bash, we worked on this year, on average, 26 runs per innings per team were not maximized. So what we did was, with the Big Bash games, we had someone score most of the games or all of the games. And, you know, we looked at if you had more power, if you hit the ball 1 mile an hour harder. So say you hit the ball to cover, to the right of cover, if he'd hit it 1 or 2 miles an hour harder, instead of being fielded, that would be 1. That would be a single or a 2. If you look at, on average, 12 runs per innings per team were lost due to balls not clearing the boundary for a 6 and instead being caught. So you look at that, that's either lack of power, lack of shot selection, or lack of execution of the shot. In total, 22 sixes were scored out of a possible 38. These are in the games that we did. So this is going to be done next year. We're going to do this for all the games. In total, 22 sixes were scored out of a possible 38. This represents a maximization ratio of 58%. Again, obviously, when you're trying to hit the ball hard, there's a greater risk. So your percentages go down. But there's stats for everything, as you can see. But this is something next year we're going to be looking to do for all the games. I hope you found that beneficial. I hope you found it interesting, thought-provoking. Any thoughts, guys, really? Open up now for a conversation, really.
Thank you, Julian.
On anything that you've just heard.
Thank you so much. I'm sure there are pointers which you're probably thinking about, agreeing, some probably not agreeing.
Yeah.
So we're in discussions, yeah? We always need one initiator.
We do.
I'll start because I think it's great that we're actually starting to get some objective data and really look at batting, Julian. So thank you very much for that presentation. I was there with Chock when you presented in Brisbane. I know you were coming in with Stubby, and we watched those drills, and we watched a lot of people standing around it created a lot of conversation. And for me, when conversation's being created, we've got opportunities to get things, improve things. So thank you for your presentation. Always insightful and delivered with that great English accent, mate. So looking forward to the conversation being stimulated out of this. But yeah, I mean, for me, power hitting is one area. T20, that's what the fans want to see. They're voting with their feet. We know that. We still know that Test cricket's got a place if there's good competition out there, but we know that scoring rates are going up slightly. So you're making it very hard for a bowling coach like me to get you bloody batters out, because you're clearing fences more often, and we've got to come up with a new strategy on how we get around the scoring rates and getting people out. So look forward to some of the comments coming through. But power hitting, mate, it's a great area and an untapped region. And thanks for your presentation.
Pleasure, mate. Absolutely pleasure.
Julian, Greg here, mate.
Hello, mate.
Just what's the biggest adjustment between batting and hitting you think that a player's got to make?
I think when you bat, you lead with your head, and when you hit, you tend to lead with your hip.
Yep.
If that makes sense.
Yep, it does.
But your head position is, you've got. So if you look at like the T20, so everybody says first 6 overs, first 2 overs maybe the bowlers play strong cricket shots. So if you look at the guys, you play strong shots because you've only got 2 out. When you get down the back end, that's where I believe. Obviously, the ball won't be swinging. It shouldn't be. It doesn't swing. The white ball doesn't swing so much. So I think you lead with your head. You get almost too close to the ball, and you crowd the ball. Whereas if you lead with your hip, then you end up your head's still in a good position, but then you get greater access to the ball. So you're not too close to it. When you lead with your head, you can only really hit the ball in one place. You can say we're going to drive the ball, cover drive. You get close to the ball and you drive the ball. You maybe angle the bat, yes. But if you put your foot, if you're not so close to the ball, then you open. And it's like I said earlier about you're not playing straight, but you're hitting straight, but you're not playing straight. So you're playing with that slightly angled bat. And then you start, like I saw Josh Butler's when he hit it over, and after that, you saw him show Morgan, I just sort of held the bat differently. But his natural swing stayed the same, but because of the angle of the bat, the ball went somewhere else, and it went over cover, and it's almost like the other way as well. When Gagan had those stats at the start about if you close your bat face 4 degrees, that makes sense when you're hitting the ball through cover because then the bat face is squarer to the ball. So instead of that slicing slightly, you're actually meeting the ball square on. But the answer to your original question, when you bat, you lead with your head. When you hit, you tend to lead with your head.
Yeah, no, it makes eminent sense. I was interested in your comment before at the early part when you talked about going to baseball and they used to look at golf.
Yeah.
I mean, the golf swing and the baseball swing are pretty similar, just different spine angle, but the swing path is still very much the same. So I can understand why they were looking at golf.
But it's funny talking to Anthony at the Cubs. He knew nothing about cricket. I met him 4 years ago, and again he was the Rangers coach. Now he's with the Cubs. So, and he didn't know anything about cricket. But now I sent him some footage of like people like Dre Russ, people like that, and he looked at the bottom half. And I've got footage. You look at they're identical. The lower halves are almost identical. Yep. So they're now looking at cricket in a way that we've looked at baseball, which is quite interesting, really, in how they can, because we get our hands to everything. That's the one thing that surprised, because they didn't understand cricket. So they said, well, show me what it is. So I batted in a net. And the first thing they said to me was, you get your hands to everything. And I said, well, yeah, but we have to, because otherwise we get out. Yeah. We have to score. We score 360. They don't. They just score in a probably less than half that. But it's interesting. And then I mentioned something to them, which sort of I got shot down in flames. I said, why don't you teach them to hit outside of the zone? Because if you have the ability, you don't have to. If you have the ability to hit outside of the zone, then it makes you harder to bowl to or pitch to.
Yep.
And they were like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. You're English. Just stick to cricket and all that stuff. And then the guy called Evan Gatters hit a home run from a ball that was like a bouncer, but obviously beamer, and he hit this thing like 120 meters, and it was head high, and the press went wild saying Gatters hits a home run that should never be hit. And then I just sent him this footage and said, there you go, my point's been proven, and his value soared.
I'll support that too, Julian. When we went to the Giants, we were sitting around the table with their coaches and we were saying, well, why don't you get them to hit to different parts of the ground? They shot us down. No. You just go with their strengths and make them stronger. We were thinking, well, you could move your fielders around like we do. We could move create gaps. You could score in different areas. No. We go harder and stronger with their strengths. And we just got to get it out of the ground, they said.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. But they're never going to listen to you.
Oh, I think they're starting to, as you said. I think they're just.
But he's interested. But I'd love to go over there and do some stuff with them. I think that hopefully in the future that could happen. I think that would be awesome.
And one of the cool things we're looking at, because we do a little bit of work with the baseball in Brisbane, Shane Watson, who heads up the Queensland side of things. He was saying now that they are really looking hard at using technology now to work out how to improve their game. Whereas before they were pretty well stuck with conventional wisdom and their eye, but wow, haven't they brought in technology to look at how measure and how to get better? So I think they're opening up their scope and looking a bit more, which is it's pretty cool for an American, isn't it?
Absolutely. Oh, massive. It's massive, especially if an English bloke starts talking to him about baseball. I love that.
Oh, it's out of the country, didn't they? Anyway. We did the same, by the way.
Yeah, that's true. Awesome.
Any questions, guys? Anything? Any points, rather, if not questions? I'm sure there'll be a lot of guys who have been working on this aspect. Apurva, if you're talking on mute.
Yeah, sorry. Julian, hi. Great insights. It's Apurva here. Just wanted to understand that I'm sure if a line is fixed for a batter, depending on the length, the angles will change, right? Or where he hits the ball. But would you consider, say, an Andre Russell and a Hardik Pandya in one bucket and a Pollard and a Craig Bath? I mean,
yeah. You look at Pollard
because just one point that Pollard and them generally dip the front shoulder to kind of brace the front leg and hit it through, and somebody like a Russell really closes the front shoulder rather than really dipping it to get that shoulder separation. So, if a cricketer came to you, would you identify those patterns and then kind of get them to hit in certain areas, or would you just follow the same?
No. It's like I said, if you looked at the different players, different shapes, everybody's different. And I know those guys are big guys, but everybody's different. So like I said, you can't cookie cut this. You can't say this is how you do it, because you can't, because everybody's got their different ways of doing it. The key thing is to make it as efficient as possible. Right, the big guys will tend to, when you get to the hitting phase of the game, the big guys will tend to stand still, really. They tend to stand still and they're just immensely powerful. The smaller guys have to try and move, so they almost load up more because they have to generate more through the ball. All right, so it's harder for the small guys because they're going to be more precise. The bigger guys, it's easier because they just, they miss-hit sixes now because they're just immensely powerful. But the key thing is you look at different players and work out what works for them or what fits in with their technique, their general technique.
Yeah, fair enough.
But everybody's different, Everybody's different.
Hi, Julian. This is Amol here.
Hello, mate. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine. Thanks. It was very informative. It was one of the most informative an hour spent. So I've been following you on YouTube as well, and there have been some really good educative videos of yours. I like the fact that when you spoke about first 5 overs, or probably first 6 overs in a T20 game, you hit powerful shots, you try to hit it down the ground, and then last 5, you try to lead with your hip. Are you suggesting the left foot going wider and then creating that space?
Okay, so you hear a lot again. It's this thing on knowledge, sometimes it's a lack of knowledge with certain commentators, even, you want to say. So, you know, your hands will follow the line of your hips.
Right.
Okay? Your hands will follow the line of your hips. So when you hear the commentators on TV say, "Oh, he just gets his left leg out the way," you know, if you just get your left leg out the way, then the ball has to be, because your hands follow your hips, the ball has to be just in the right area, right? So when you bat normally, right? So when you lead with your head, right? Your head goes towards the ball, doesn't it?
Yep.
Right. So what I'm saying is, you don't get, your head goes towards the ball. So when you move, you see the ball. Don't just get your front leg and just chuck it out the way. You've got to see the line of the ball, and you have to put that foot, lead with that hip, put that foot, not too close to it, but not too far away. So you have to analyze the line of the ball.
Right.
Does that make
So
sense?
you lead with your hip.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right. So you don't want to get too close to it, but you don't want to get too far away.
Far
You're
away.
basically you're just trying to line it up. You're trying to line your hips up, because your hands will follow your hips.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And then you look at angle of the front foot as well. You know, you don't want your front foot to be sprayed open, because then your back hips already come through. You want your front foot at a slight angle, which then allows that back hip to come through.
Yeah.
Otherwise, and it's the timing of the hip, you see, the timing of the movements. You know, so if you look at, you know, the kinetic chain of events, as we say, you know, everything's connected, you know, so it starts down the bottom. It starts, you know, with your legs, trunk, back, shoulder, elbow, and then the last thing is your wrists. A lot of energy stored in your wrists. You know, the key features for me are storing of energy all the way through the movements. Okay, if that makes sense. Any weakness in the chain will basically severely limit your chances of hitting the ball hard. So as a coach, you know, it's like I said, if your ball exit speed is down because there's something missing, maybe you're not getting off your back leg, maybe your hip isn't getting involved. So some guys will have their hip come open too early. Some guys won't use their hips. So then I've got a device that it resists you, so it works your back hip, but then so it forces you to use your hip. But then I can put it on another way, another bungee the other way, and it makes you use your hip, if that makes sense. So it encourages. It's just a feel thing,
right?
Feel thing. But the answer to your original question, yeah, you've got to line it up. It's not just a case of sticking your foot, you know, like just chucking your left leg out the way and swinging. There's more to it than that. A lot more.
Julian, can I ask you how important it is to match the bat to the person as well? I mean, you know, tennis, all those golf, they're always matching the implement. I mean, we always blame the implement if it goes wrong.
Yeah.
How important is it to match the bat? I mean, that's to the technique.
Yeah, massive. I think, you know, you get the big guys who will use a bloody great everything, which is fine. I see, you know, a lot of players use like 2.7, 2.6, 2.7, and some will go shorter. You know, the blade's a bit shorter. Again, it's a case of what works for you. You know, if you're a wristy player, you probably don't want a lot of weight in the bat, to be fair. If your hands are quick, you know, you don't want a heavy bat too much. But then I go back to when I put the sleeves on, you know, the quick guys, they almost slows them down, and a lot of players will use those and they'll hit the ball better. They're like, I hit it better with those on. And I said, well, yeah, but that's tempo. That's tempo. Your hands are quick. So what you need to learn is obviously with those on, it's just how your hands will always get you out of trouble anyway, because they're quick, but it's just the tempo of the swing. And then with the other guys, it's speed. Those guys with slow hands or slower hands or normal hands, you know, that will increase. So, but regarding bats, I think that's massive, you know, but again, it's down to everybody's preference really.
Yeah.
But just because you're trying to hit big, it doesn't mean you need a heavier bat.
Fair enough. Thank you.
That makes sense.
Julian, if I could continue from where Troy asked, I think just want to ask that I understand between light balls and heavy balls that it does allow you to, light balls help you to get more momentum into the ball, and the heavy balls tend to, really get the power out of your core. But you said about weighted bats, different weighted bats.
Yeah.
There's a school of thought that different weighted bats will affect your kinetic change. So what's your take on that?
Okay, so you're using this, right? So when you're working on hand speed, right? So I use different weighted bats with different weighted balls. All right. So the balls I use are the light ones are 3 ounces. So I use a 3 ounce ball with a 113 bat, which is a light bat, light ball. Then we go 14 ounce ball, 21 ounce ball. I've got a 3 pound ball. I've got a 4 pound ball. And they're all soft, right? So they sit on the bat for a long time. And the bats, I have 60%, 40%, 20%. All right. So basically, the 20% is with the 14 ounce ball and so forth. So when you're trying to increase hand speed, right, it's a drill, right? It's a drill. It's a power-based drill. So you need to swing that bat as hard as you can, right? Because we're ball players, we'll swing the bat anyway. Now, I'm not doing a technical session. It's purely getting those hands through the ball. So you would only use it for that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you'll have the basic tech. You'll have the technique because you're good, because you're a good player.
Basically,
right?
you lose light
It
ball.
won't change. No, it won't change. It won't change because I'm not using it as a technical tool. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And then you always finish with your normal bat and cricket balls anyway.
Okay. Cheers, Julian.
A lot of people have said that's a big thing about that. A lot of people have said that oh yeah, but it's going to affect my team. If it's too heavy, you wouldn't use if you've got a 15-year-old kid, you wouldn't give him a 4 pound bat unless he's the size of Chris Gale. All right, you wouldn't do that. So you do it. So it's almost just 20% above what they use, basically. Okay, and then you work your way down, but you cater for who you're working with. So you're catering. I can cater for everyone because, like someone like Chris Gale or Carlos. Carlos picked up the 4 pound bat as if it was a bloody toothpick, and he hit this. I got a 4 pound ball, which is like a cannonball, but it's soft and it sits on the bat. And so, he hit that like it was just amazing, really. Phenomenal power. Yeah. Right. And the great thing about the weighted balls, so you go to the 14s and the 21s ounces, they're great for contact, just in normal batting. Because what it does, it magnifies any mistakes. So I would use that before they have throwdowns. I just get them, because then if you make a mistake, the ball goes sideways, right? Because maybe their head's not getting forward. You just come across it. Whereas in cricket, if you use the cricket ball, then you'll probably just get away with it.
Yeah.
Whereas this magnifies any mistake. It breaks your heart sometimes because it goes behind you. So, and it's almost like self-coaching. I use them as like a coaching aid. They're like coaching aids. So you don't need me. You just use those, I think they're excellent. And they're probably one of the biggest things I've had. The weighted balls. I think they're fantastic. I hope that answered your question.
Yep. Cheers.
Julian, I have been asked a couple of times, and I wanted to see, we discussed about body positions and so on and so forth. The bowler, spin versus pace. The first question, very basic, is that do you see that the bat speed changes based on the bowler if the intent is to hit with power? Have you seen that there's a difference in bat speed?
What, against spin or seam? Or just...
Yeah,
because I would... Okay, so to me, like when I started doing this, right, I measured myself. I don't play anymore, but I measured myself. I hit sixes over cover, right? I hit sixes over cover and mid-off. That was probably my go-to area. So my hand speed over cover and mid-off was like 82 miles an hour. It was really good. It was quick. But then when I went round to the leg side, my hand speed was like 10 miles an hour lower. So if I was playing now, again, going back to what was said earlier on about the, making that's my strength. So I'm going to make that my super strength. But I need to improve on this because they'll just bowl at me here. So if I was playing now, I would do drills to increase my hand speed here now. So everybody will have their good area and everybody will have their not so good areas. So, and like I measure hand speed. I measure it when they cut, when they drive, when they, cover, straight, all around the wicket here. And then I find out where they're good and we obviously improve on that. But then the ones that are not so good, you sort of hammer that as well. Regards to, I think it might be quicker. I would say, look at Chris Lynn hitting that 6 there. Now, he got, obviously Tate's bowling at 90 plus miles an hour. So everything he did with his movements, everything in his movements were absolutely in sync to hit that ball like he did. He probably, will he do that again as far as that? He probably will, but he won't do it regularly. So it's the rhythm and timing of the movements. I would say it's easier to get rhythm against a seam bowler, a quick bowler, because you're in and you get that 1, 2, the movement, and then so I would say your hand speed is quicker. You might prove me wrong here, against seam, against pace, than against spin.
What we have seen, Julian, is that actually the speed remains almost similar. It's just that the time when you start the downswing is further delayed.
Against spin, obviously.
Spin, right? You actually hold on to it. Your bat goes a bit wider against spin to get that access to the mid wicket and so on and so forth. But we have seen that the bat speed actually remains the same, which was actually difficult for me to communicate to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And they thought otherwise, but
everybody has their, you're like, what I'm trying to do when I work with batters, I'm trying to produce effortless hand speed. Right? It's effortless. If you try and hit the ball hard, you probably won't. You've got to want to hit it. There's a difference between wanting and trying. All right. So you've got to want to hit the ball hard, but everybody will say when they hit the ball the best is when it's just effortless. As soon as you try and muscle it, you get stiff, tense, you fly off the ball. But what I'm trying to do is trying to create that effortless, and your feet are crucial to me. Your feet, you've got to try and create that straight line. Yeah. The quickest route from A to B is a straight line, isn't it?
And that's a perfect segue to the next question I had. Feet are more important or head?
Okay, so your hands will always go to the ball because that's what you get told to do, right? Your hands know what to do. My hands know to get to the ball. So to me, okay, when I'm hitting, if my feet are in the right place, I don't need to worry about my hands. They'll just go to the ball. If my feet are in the wrong place, I've got to worry about my hands because my hands will find a way to get to the ball. And so if you look at when you hit the ball in the middle of the bat, right, in the sweet spot, okay, like I said, you have to generate, you generate 85% of the power when you hit forwards. It comes from the batter. So if you don't hit the ball in the sweet spot, you lose 30%. So your best opportunity is to try and create that straight line. So I'm going to say feet. When you're hitting a ball, when you're looking to strike the ball, you still need to your head needs to be down and stuff like that. But I think feet, if you get your feet in the right place, you can hit the ball wherever you want, really.
Awesome.
That would be my argument. A lot of people might disagree with that, but
I'm trying to figure it out. I don't know, right? I don't have.
I would say feet, honestly, because your hands will go to the ball. So you're just trying to produce that straight line and that most efficient bat path through the ball.
Awesome. Guys, we are almost. Any last question, comment? Okay.
Yeah, hi Julian. Just a little bit of more on to the feet part. We saw the video earlier. Virat Kohli hitting the ball for RCB. How
Yeah.
important is that braced front foot? I mean, braced front leg. How important role does it play in hitting the ball long way?
It's like okay, so I'm not a bowling coach, but there's bowling coaches on here. Would I be right in saying that if quick bowlers who have a braced front knee, braced front leg, have the ability to bowl quicker than guys who have a bent front knee? That would be my question to bowling coaches. Troy, you're the man.
That's a good question. If you're talking about lever principles and all that sort of stuff, the brace front leg is a good one because it gives you a solid base to hit off. Definitely. Yeah. It does have high injury concerns when you're in a fast bowling impact zone. But what we looked at too is if you actually bent your leg and then through the last sequence extended it to a straighter leg, you actually got a little bit of a lever there. So you could use, like Mitchell Johnson used to land with a bent front leg, but then used to straighten it into delivery. So he got some real massive sort of uplift from that bend straightening. Yeah. But for me, as long as that knee is stable at release, you've got a solid base to hit off. So you just don't want it going backwards or collapsing. No. My area, yeah.
So I would say same thing. I would say the same principle to like with the bowlers. When you step forward, you're not going to step with a braced leg. It has to soften slightly, and then when that back leg dry, like you look at Virat, this has been recorded. So when you look at Virat play that shot, it will bend slightly, and then when the timing of his movements are perfect, so that when that back leg drives in, then it drives into his front leg. So it's the same principle, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. The lever principle is a pretty good one. If you've got a solid foundation, you can use levers to maximize force and speed. So
my answer would be yes. Yeah. If you have when you lean into the shot, when you drive a ball, you lean in. It's so you sort of drift through the ball. Whereas when you look at it, it's a bit more snappy and a bit more punchy. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
absolutely. Especially with the people, kind of boys we work with here in our country, Julian. They're not of the size of a Chris Gayle or an Amre Russell or somebody like that. They're like pretty small built and all. So we need to get all these things right to hit the ball long way. And I having worked with them for a few years, figured out that along with the brace front foot and front leg, that small pause that is there before the strike also plays a bigger role when it comes to hitting the ball a long way. That small pause just before the strike.
Yeah, it's that rhythm. It's that separation as well, hand separation. And then, like I said, your hands will always go to the ball, right? That's what they do. But it's getting that rhythm and timing so that all the movements are in sync.
Julian, that's if you're watching the ball.
You have to look at the ball,
Obviously, unless we're playing, the blind cricket and they're listening to the ball, of course. You need to watch that bloody ball. So the eyes will tell you and the body takes over. So
absolutely.
You've got good solid bases to hit off. Wow, you've got a foundation to try and clear those boundaries. So good biomechanical principles, mate. We all should go back and learn all that sort of stuff. And then
all good.
And then the two words I love, effective and efficient, Once you've got effective, then the coach can come in and make it efficient. And that's the higher you get. I always thought the higher you get into coaching, someone will come in with an effective method because they are in front of you and they've got there. But the job of the coach is then how can we tweak this to make it more efficient? And I think
absolutely.
That's a key quality of a good coach, I reckon. So thank you very much, mate, for all this.
Pleasure, mate. All good.
Seriously, thank you so much. This was really, really enlightening. Some amazing numbers, some amazing insights. It was fantastic. And thank you guys. Thank you so much for joining in. Really appreciate your time. I hope you find this as useful as I did. Thank you guys for. I have one request before you log off. Obviously, this is coming out to a pretty great community. We discuss almost every alternate weeks. if there's any subject which you want to listen into or to talk about, please share. We'll be happy to, try and make that happen so that this community actually says what they want to discuss and talk about. We'll make that happen. On that note,
just on that, for me, I'm measuring objective data, and I think your device, how we can measure effectively how we're improving things. I think that's a key topic I'd love to explore with everyone on here, whether it be bowling, batting, fielding. Being able to measure objective data in good, quick time. What can we do in that area? I think is a great topic.
Fantastic. Actually, and we could go with a complete blue sky thinking there, rather than having a bias of a particular technology. What data points, what insights will make that bowler, the batter, do the job better, right? And we could do that. I think that's a fantastic idea. Awesome.
Look forward to that.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, guys. Brilliant. I enjoyed it.
It was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thanks, Julian.
Thank you, Julian.
Good luck in Dubai, everyone over there.
Lovely, thanks.